안녕하세요 and welcome back to All Things Korean. Today's video is a follow-up to my previous video, which was about, the different variations of Korean handwriting. And a few of you in the comments told me that it would be nice if I did a analyzing real Korean handwriting type of video, so I'm here to do that. So today I have a real Korean handwriting sample that we're going to look over together and try to decipher. And I thought if I'm going to do it, why not do it with a celebrity's handwriting? And so today's video topic is going to be the handwriting of BTS member Jungkook. If you're not a big fan of K-pop, you can just think of it as the handwriting of a Korean male in his 20s. You don't necessarily need to watch it because it's a K-pop celebrity. I literally was just Googling celebrity handwritings in Korean, and I came across several blog posts that were dedicated solely to Jungkook's handwriting, which is why I chose him for this video, because apparently he had a really terrible handwriting and he was really self-conscious about it, but he put in a lot of effort to improve his handwriting, and his handwriting now is super neat and it could practically be like a computer font or something. It's like that good. But if you look at his handwriting from years ago, it was pretty terrible. And that is the one that we're going to be looking at today. So I have a letter that Jungkook wrote to Jimin, who's another fellow BTS member, for his 20th birthday. So this is like a happy birthday kind of letter. We're going to go over it together. Let's look at some of the ways that he writes his characters and letters and whatnot. And before we begin, I'm just going to show you the letter first. Take a few minutes and try to decipher it yourself. See how much of it you can get or understand. You can pause the video to take a look at it. And why don't you take a look? Okay, how did you find that? I'm pretty sure that some of these characters are really hard to recognize, but don't worry, we're going to go over them together. I strongly recommend that you watch my previous video first, because then you'll understand the importance of stroke order, and then you'll be able to kind of better recognize some of these letters. If not, let's just head straight into this. That's fine. So let's go. So the first two words are pretty straightforward in my opinion. I think they're pretty easy to understand. It says to 지민이 형, 안녕하세요. So 안녕하세요 was written pretty neatly. The ni은, this part, is a bit rounded. So normally when you first learn Hangul, it's supposed to be written like this, more angular. But as you can see here, it's a bit rounded. Let's look at the next word, 박지민이 형. So he's addressing Jimin, right? Here, the pi읍, as you can see, is written in this standard stroke order. 1, 2, 3, 4. 지민이 형. Now this 미음, I've also mentioned it in my previous video. It's supposed to be written 1, 2, 3, 4. But here you can see it's a bit rounded, but it's still clearly a 미음. So 안녕하세요, 박지민이 형. Now this 여 is very sloppily written. These two strokes look like they're nearly combined into one, but obviously we can tell that it's 형 and not 헝 because there is no such word as 헝. So 안녕하세요, 박지민이 형. 저는 정국입니다. Now let's look at this 입. The pi읍 here is different from the one here. Here, he follows the correct stroke order, but in this 입니다, he makes a bucket and a stroke. So this is another very common way that Koreans write pi읍. Now let's look at the 다, the last one. As you can see, a is supposed to be written like this, but instead it's written like this. This can happen when you're writing very quickly. The line over here is omitted, but according to the stroke order and according to context, you can tell that this last character is 다. So the first sentence reads, 안녕하세요, 박지민이 형. 저는 정국입니다. She's introducing himself, saying hi. Now let's look at the second line. 형이, again, this is 형, and the 여 is not like parallel, as you can see. It's a bit more like 형. But following the stroke order, you can tell that it's 여. So 형이 태어나서 20번째 생일을 맞이하는데. Okay, let's look at a few more characters here. 20번째, 니은, again, it's very rounded. And here for the 피읍, he follows the correct stroke order again. Now let's look at the word 생일. The 리을 is also a very commonly written form. So instead of the correct stroke order, which is 1, 2, 3, he just writes it like that. And although this is not the correct stroke order, most Koreans write it like this, so it's completely acceptable. 생일을 맞이하는데. So this 대, again, if you see the way he writes the vowel, instead of writing it like 1, 2, 3, he goes like that, right? So this little line here is missing, but according to the stroke order, it's left to right, top to bottom, top to bottom. There's only one explanation, and this can only read as 대. Let's look at the third line. His handwriting is getting a bit more messier and messier. 제가 편지를 안 쓸 수가 없죠. Now let's look at this 안. This combination, it doesn't really look like a vowel and consonant. It looks like two 니은. But again, this part, you can tell that it's 아 based on the stroke order. So it's 안 쓸 수가 없죠. Now this 쓸, this double consonant, this 시옷, 쌍시옷, he tends to write it really horizontally. So normally it would look like this. But for him, it gets like really spread out like that. So 안 쓸 수, if you look at this 우, instead of writing it like this, he writes it like this. So 안 쓸 수가 없죠. Here again, the 피읍 is back to the bucket and slash as opposed to the correct stroke order, which he uses a couple of times. Both are completely okay. They're legible, so you don't need to worry about that. Now, what is this? This is kill. So this is how Koreans laugh. It's like the LOL of Korean. And it doesn't really look like a properly written k, but based on context, there's nothing else that could really make sense except for k, so that's what it is. Now let's look at the next line. 정말. Now this 정, it's written like this in one stroke. Right? So you need to be able to split this and see that it is 어 being connected into an 이응 받침. So even though this part of the stroke is missing, based on the order, you can tell that this is 정. Now same goes for 말. If you remember from my past video, this can only be interpreted as 미음. Again, the 아 was written like that. 리을 was written like that. So 정말, 생일, again he does it where he connects the vowels straight into the 이응. 생일, 축하하고. This is one of the more badly written letters, but let's take a look. So the 치, it's a 1, 2, 3, and then he doesn't lift up the pen, he kind of connects it straight to the 우, and then ends with a 기역 받침. So this line is not supposed to be there. You need to kind of see that that was just a connecting line. That's not really part of the letter. And this ha, so it's this like the very, very small circle. And then the a again is written just like a niun. But again, you can tell it's an a because of the stroke order. Now this is supposed to be a ha. I think he kind of messed up his letter first and then kind of like tried to correct himself. But that's ha. And this kind of looks like a knotted u, right? But if you look really closely, there is a subtle stroke order in play. It's top to bottom, left to right, and so this becomes 고. So 정말 생일 축하하고. So I sincerely wish you a happy birthday. Now let's look at this. These words are also a bit difficult to read. But first, you can tell that this is here, right? Now let's look at this part. It's 1, 2, 3. That's how we wrote it, right? So the first part is a vowel. It starts with top to bottom and it kind of connects into left to right. So that's a. And that connects straight into a 이응. So it's 항. And again, the same thing over here, connected to a iung. So this word is 항상. 항상. Let's look at this one. 1, 2, 3. This is cool. And again, this is another one of those cases where the mium is written really quickly. So mium, and then it connects into this thing. And again, it's really messy, but if you look closely at the stroke order, it's top to bottom, left to right. And so it's a. And on the bottom, it's also really hard to see it maybe, but it is a rounded bucket with a stroke. So this is 마. So 항상 고맙고, I'm always grateful. And 항상, this is the same word as this. They're both 항상. And I know this kind of looks like a li을, but there's a little stroke on the top. So if it's that, then you know that it has to be a hi읗 because li을 doesn't have that little stroke on top. So 항상 고맙고, 항상. Now let's look at this word. This word is also supposed to be 형. So it should be written like 1, 2, 형, right? So let's see if we can find the stroke order here. We have left to right, top to bottom, and then iung, right? So here he has left to right, and then connected to the next left to right. And instead of starting here to make a line, he just goes straight down into the iung. So he writes it like this, right? And not ideal, but based on context, I could kind of still tell that he wrote 형. So, 정말 생일 축하하고, 항상 고맙고, 항상 형이. Now let's head over to the next line. Now, what is this? If you can't tell, again, let's try following the stroke order. So it's 1, it could be call, right? But can it though? Because there's another stroke order that goes from left to right. So it's not all because there's a stroke to the right of it. This is a consonant. This is 지읒, 아, and then a 이응 받침. So this is 장. This one is fairly straightforward. So the word is 장난, to play around, joke around. So now that we have the word 장난, I can guess from context that the words following is 장난치는 거, right? This third character was also a bit difficult. It kind of looks like a Q and an O, right? But following the stroke order, it looks like a 치읓 like that. 장난치는 거. And next word, 귀. And this is 귀찬. 귀찮아하고. So let's look at the stroke order here. This is, again, a fairly poorly written character, but let's take a look. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 치읓, and then there was a 아, 니은, and then it follows with a 히읗. Next letter is 아. Again, the 아 is written very quickly, so there's a missing line here at the bottom. 하고. So again, most of his 아's are written in this way, like a 니은. 귀찮아하고. And what is this? This is again another 아. And it's hard to see. It's hard to tell, I know. But I know that it's based on context because there isn't really any other vowel that makes sense in here. So if you see closely, there is a mini stroke order in place. So here's the iung, and here, like that. So it's like a tiny little top to bottom, left to right stroke. So 안. And here is another attempt to follow the correct stroke order in 비읍, but instead of like completing at the bottom, he kind of goes straight into the next vowel, and it becomes 파. And this can be either 팔 or 밭, but based on context, I can tell that it's 밭. Because, 장난치는 거 귀찮아하고 안 받아주지만. So basically what he's trying to say is, I don't really play along when you kind of joke around and mess around with me. 안 받아주지만. So this looks kind of like 주, as you can see, the U is written like this instead of this. 주지만. Okay, and this is, I think, the messiest mium yet, but it still kind of makes sense. It's like that, right? So you can tell that the stroke order was 1, 2, 3. 안 받아주지만 일부러. So the 일부러 means on purpose. 부, you can see he did the bucket stroke again. And the 우, it is written like this. The little line is missing, but still it looks like 부, 일부러. Next line. 그러는 게 아닌 거 알죠? 일부러 그러는 게 아닌 거 알죠? So he's saying, I know I get like really annoyed when you mess around, but you know that's not on purpose. Now, let's look at this letter. This is supposed to be a 기역, but it's written really, really subtle. You can barely tell. It's supposed to look like this, but still, I can still tell it's 그. 그러는 게, in this law, as you can see, the stroke order is left to right and top to bottom. So this part again is missing, but it still looks like law. So 그러는 게, here, this 는, you can see that the 으 and 니은 are kind of connected, and that happens when you write quickly. Same goes for 개. So instead of 1, 2, 3, it's written 1, 2. So 그러는 게 again, the is like that. 아닌 거 알죠? So this can look like a G or a call, but I know it's a call based on context. 일부러 그러는 게 아닌 거 알죠? He doesn't close his 이응. I get really hung up on that. I really like it when the 이응 gets closed, but that's a personal pet peeve of mine. But anyway, 그러는 게 아닌 거 알죠? Again, the is written like that. Here is another 크. This is another LOL. 형, 사랑하고. So 형, this is again a 형. Hard to tell, but 1, 2, and this is supposed to be a little circle. And then this looks like more than one left to right line, right? So it's nearly overlapping, but you can sort of tell that it's 2 horizontal lines. So 1, 2, and then top to bottom, so it's 여, leading straight into 이응. So 형, 사랑하고. Let's look at how he writes 앙. So this is top to bottom, left to right, heading straight into the 받침. So 사랑하고. So as you can see, his 히읗, a lot of his 히읗 doesn't have a full circle sometimes, but I can still kind of tell. So it should be like that. 하. And again, the ha is written like this. 고, you can see top to bottom and left to right. And let's look at this. 다시. This is supposed to be 다시. How do I know? I know it looks like 라시, but there's no such word as 라시. So the stroke order, as you can see, the correct stroke order for 디귿 is left to right and then like that. So this is him kind of doing that, but making it super, super rounded. 다시 한 번. Again, here not written the best way. It's supposed to be like that. And then he kind of connects it straight to that, the So 다시 한 번. So 번, as you can see, it's written in one fluid stroke as well. Just left to right, top to bottom, heading straight into the 니은. So 다시 한 번. And this next one, 생일. 축하드려요. So he has a 시옷 over here, and the eng is written 1, 2, 3, and then it connects straight into the 이응. So 생일. Here the 리을 is written like that. 생일 축하드려요. So 축, you can see the 우 was written like that, right? And the 하 in 축하, again the circle was not written properly. And 르, I know it looks like 르, it looks like the exact same lir as this one, but again, based on context, there's no such word as 축하드려요. It's supposed to be 축하드려요. So the stroke order is supposed to be like that, but it's just written a lot more fluidly. and then 려요, 축하드려요. Finally, let's look at the last line. 다음, again, the 미음 is written like that. 다음에. This part is cut off, as you can see, it's written like that. 밥, 한 끼. So again, the here is kind of left open-ended, leads straight into the a. So top to bottom, left to right. And it's supposed to be a consonant. I know it just looks like this, but there's no consonant that looks like that. So I'm assuming it's supposed to be a top to bottom, left to right. So it's 한 끼, 밥 한 끼, one meal. 제가 사겠습니다. So 다음에 밥 한 끼 제가 사겠습니다. I'll treat you to a meal next time. Now 제가, again, the 가 was written like this. And 사, 시옷, and here it's an a. 사겠, 어이, again, this part is left out. You wrote like this. And the 쌍시옷, again, it's written really horizontally. And then 습니다. 다 was written like that. Exclamation point, and ends with a Q. So by looking at the notes and how I traced over a lot of his letters, you can tell this is not the best handwriting, unfortunately. On the bright side, he's really improved. And if you look at some of his recent letters, he's come such a long way. And I'm not personally a fan of BTS, but I'm really proud of him, you know? He probably did it so he can, write better letters or notes or messages to his fans. But yeah, hopefully this gives you some sort of insight on how to decipher handwriting that could be a bit messy and harder to read. If there are any other celebrity samples that you want me to look over, let me know, I guess. If you want to see more of these, give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to All Things Korean for more Korean related videos, and I will see you in the next one. 다음 영상에서 만나요.